welcome those who are watching us by Facebook Live. Joshua chapter 21. So welcome to all our Facebook listeners and welcome to all our YouTube listeners. Welcome to everybody here today. Did anything happen to you within the last week that was a blessing to you? And then if we heard it would be a blessing to us? Anybody have an incident or a situation that was a blessing to you, and if we heard it would be a blessing to us? Okay, we'll probably get some of those as we go ahead. Okay, in chapter 20, after the distribution of the land, chapter 19, verse 49 said that Joshua was the last person to get his inheritance, or the last group to get his inheritance of the land. Joshua was the son of Nun, and he led the people after Moses. And for 40 some years, he was a follower of Jesus, and he made sure that all the tribes got their land, all the people got their inheritance as God had commanded in Genesis chapter 49. And at the end, as a true servant, this is the mark of a true servant, is the last in line. The Bible says in Genesis chapter Joshua chapter 19, verse 49, when they finish apportioning the land for the inheritance by its borders, these are the 12 tribes, 2.5 on the east and 9.5 on the west of Jericho. The sons of Israel gave an inheritance in the midst to Joshua, the son of Nun. If you want to be a real leader, you must be a servant. Jesus taught this to his disciples. When Peter said, Jesus said, "Let me wash your feet, Peter." And Peter said, No, Lord, don't wash my feet. And Jesus said, in essence, if you want to be like me, you got to be a servant like me. And so many people have written about servant leaderships and servanthood and things like that. Let me do this one more time. So now we get to Genesis chapter 20 when we talk about the cities of refuge. Now we know that from Numbers that the cities of refuge covered 6 cities, 3 sort of on the west and 3 sort of on the east. And these cities were located in such a way that an Israelite could get to them within 10 miles. A city of refuge, as we're going to learn, was a place where people who accidentally kill someone or unintentionally sin, and they could go there and not be avenged by their avenger. So let's start looking at Joshua chapter 20. Then the Lord spoke to Joshua, saying, "Speak to the sons of Israel, designate the cities of refuge of which I spoke to you through Moses." And that's in Numbers and Deuteronomy. And the reason why we have the cities of refuge is that the manslayer, this is verse 3, someone who kills any person unintentionally. That is, if you're outside cutting wood and your axe fly off your axe handle, and your best friend or somebody standing close to you is hit in the head by your axe handle, by your axe rather, and dies. Now, because there was no police force at this time in Israel, the avenger would be the closest relative. Now, why was there no police force, you think? Cities of refuge. So we're in 21. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. 21. Okay, because I was thinking, why did I ask? Why was no police force? Why was no police force in the cities of refuge? Christians don't need a police force for them, do they? Do you think when you get to heaven you're going to see police on the streets? Well, do you need a police force in your home? I'm not talking about people breaking in. I'm talking about for you to make sure that you and your family stay within. The church shouldn't have to have a police force for the people in church. Now, of course, on not people coming in, but for the police in church, there shouldn't be a police force because we should all be what? Loving and courteous and kind, shouldn't we? Can you imagine when you get to heaven, you're going to see a cop on the street just in case? No, it's not going to be that way. So God's people don't need a police force in that sense. I can't get my, let me go back and try once again on my Facebook. I'm not getting my Facebook. Let me just try it one more time. Okay. Chapter 21 then. That's where we are. All right. The Levites. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Chapter 21. Then the Levites were the people who worked in the temple. Now the priests came from the Levites, but not all the Levites were priests. They were the tribe that didn't get inheritance, but they did get 48 cities because each Levite was given a city, or the Levites were given cities, 42 for spread out across Israel, and then another 6 for cities of refuge. But the Levites did not get a city. Now get an inheritance rather. And the Genesis had forecast that the Levites would be spread out across the land, because remember, these two brothers, Simeon and Levi, were the ones who tricked a whole nation, a whole group of people into being circumcised, pretending to be friends, because the leader of that group attacked their daughter, or seduced their sister rather, Diana, and they felt like she was seduced by this man, or raped in their case, and so they said, "We forgive you." And then they said, "Okay, you can become a part of our tribes, and you can marry her legally and all that. All you gotta do is be circumcised." And so when they were circumcised, and the men were circumcised, and during the healing process, while they were being healed, Simeon and Levi, the two sons of Jacob, went in and killed all the men. And Jacob said to them, "You are the worst boys who've ever lived." And he said, "You will, when we get to the land, you will not prosper as much in terms of the land." And so Simeon didn't get much land, and Levi didn't get any land in that sense, but they were still blessed. So, but that's what the curse, so to speak, that was given to them. But the heads of the household of the Levites appeared before Eleazar the priest, Joshua the son of Nun, and the heads of the households of the tribes of Israel. Verse 2. It's going to kill Facebook right now. They spoke to them at Shiloh, the land of Canaan, saying, "The Lord commanded, though Moses, to give us cities to live in," because they didn't have any land. And it was 42 cities, by the way. And so verse 3, so the sons of Israel gave the Levites from their inheritance the cities, pasture land, according to the commandment of God. And then we see in verse 4, the land was distributed to the Koranites, those are Levites. We see in verse 6 that the land with 13 cities were given to the Levites. We see in verse 7, another group, land was given to the Levites. And then in verse 19, we see that Aaron's sons, all the cities of sons of Aaron's son, the priests, were given 13 cities. The other people were given some, but the priests themselves were given 13 cities. It was sort of like a landlord. They weren't giving them for their own, but to live in rent-free and to raise a family. because they were inside the tribes of the, it was inside the tribes land. So the Levites were given land to live free. Verse 40, we read that all these were the cities of Maharaja, according to the families of the rest of the families of the Levites, and the lot was 12 cities. So it just going through the different cities that were different Levites were given cities of chapter 21. Then so all the Levites got their cities, and look at verse 44 and 45 of chapter 21. And the Lord gave them rest on every side, according to all that he has sworn to their fathers, and not one of all their enemies stood before them. The Lord gave all their enemies into their hand. So God protected them in the promised land. So now they're in the promised land. Everybody has their land. Everybody has what God had promised them. Verse 45. Not one of the good promises which the Lord had made to the house of Israel failed. All came to pass. And that's a big statement, isn't it? Now they're in the land. Finally, after 400, 500 years. Well, actually going back all the way to Genesis, chapter 12. And now God they have the law, they have the people, now they have the land. And all of that will one day come a person who will save the world. God chose Israel in chapter 12 of Genesis, chose Abraham to produce a nation so a person can be selected to save the world. He had tried the other way. He had tried previously choosing individuals, Noah and all those. It didn't work. So he said, I'm going to choose a nation. I'm going to build me a nation. And so Abraham started up here, and I'm going to give him some laws, the 10 Commandments, and I'm going to give him some people, the multitude, and I'm going to give him some land. And all of that will come a person who will save the world. And so you got a victory. So who came from all of that through 42 generations to save the world? Jesus Christ. So in Genesis, in John chapter 3, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. So the son of David, son of Abraham, as Matthew says, son of David, son of Abraham, came down, and he's going back to save the world. So God has chosen a nation to produce a person. That's why he chose a nation, to produce a person. And that person is the Savior of the world. Now everything is settled, you would think. Yes, sir. I am mindful of scripture. The scepter shall not depart. Well, shallow means rest. You're talking about Genesis chapter 49 when Jacob blesses the children, his 12 boys. And Judah was the one that he said the scepter shall not, mean king, shall always be there. And so Jesus came out of the lion of the tribe of Judah, and he's the king. I'm looking at this map that shows Shiloh in Ephraim. Well, the word means rest. I'm not sure what Shiloh comes, rest. Yeah. I'm not looking at the map. So where's the map? Where is Shiloh located in reference to Jerusalem? Where is it located in reference to Jerusalem? It's the 12 tribes. But is it? Yeah, yeah. I think Shiloh was the place initially where the Israelites settled until they went to Hebron. They met the capital city, and then lastly to Jerusalem, the city of David. But what you're talking about is the prophecy that Jacob puts on his sons, and he's saying that the king shall come from the tribe of Judah, and that's what Jesus is. He came from the tribe of Judah. Judah, by the way, was the first son that said to Reuben, when Joseph was captured, when he had the many colors, he said, let's kill him. So he was for killing Joseph, but the other, Reuben said, no, let's sell him in slavery. But later on, Judah was a son that said to his father Jacob, if Benjamin doesn't come back from going to Egypt, I will sacrifice my own son. And that was a symbol of Judah willing to sacrifice his own son for his brother. And that's sort of like Jesus, God sacrificed his own son. So Judah rose to prominence. And the word Judah means praise. So he rose to prominence. So his tribe was a tribe that was always leading the march. And so Jesus comes from the line of the tribe of Judah. I wouldn't put too much stock in the geography, but I'm not looking at the map, so I'm not sure where Shiloh is in reference to Jerusalem. But the word itself means rest. So in chapter 22 begins Joshua's farewell, and something happens in chapter 22. You remember the 2.5 tribes that got their land on the east of Jericho, the Danites, the Reubenites, and half the tribe of Manasseh. And Moses said, now y'all have to fight with them, and when you finish fighting with them and they get their land, you can go back home. Now they settled for less. They thought that the land on the east side of Jordan was better, so that's where they settled. So now that the fight is over, they're going to get ready to go back home. The 2.5 tribes. They're going to go back across the Jordan River and with their families that they left there. So let's read this because this is very interesting. The idea is that 2.5 tribes are going back home now once the fighting is over. So then Joshua summoned the Reubenites, this is chapter 22, verse 1, and the Gadites and the half tribe of Manasseh, and said to them, you have kept all that Moses, servant of the Lord, commanded you, and have listened to my voice in all that I have commanded you. Verse 3, you have not forsaken your brothers these many days to this day, but have kept the charge, the commandment of the Lord your God. Now, verse 4, the Lord your God has given rest to your brothers as he spoke to them. Therefore, turn now and go to your tents or go back home. Now you have fulfilled your obligation. Go back home. Now, many things can be looked at this. Number one, they should have crossed with all of them in the beginning, but that's past now. So we're not going to deal with that. So they decided to go back home to the land of your possession, which Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you beyond the Jordan. Now, Moses didn't really want to, but they said they wanted it, so he gave in. Verse 5. Only be careful, and this is what Moses tells them. Now that you're going to go back, or you're going to be separated from the brothers. Only be careful to observe the commandment and the law which Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, to love the Lord your God and walk in all his ways and keep his commandments and hold fast to him and serve him with all your heart and with all your soul. That's their spiritual commitment. Now, when you leave, that's what I want you to do. You're going back. You're not going to be with the group anymore. The altar's up here in our part of the country where you're going to have to come worship. But just put the God in your heart. Isn't that something you tell people when they leave, your children or whoever? I know you're not going to be home, but serve the Lord with all your heart and all your soul. And so it was sort of a teary farewell. They're leaving. You can imagine several hundred, maybe 100,000 people leaving. Speaking of 100,000, somebody made a accidental donation in the electronic offering the other day of $100,000.
Church?
Yeah.
It wasn't accidental.
Yeah, they called me. And I said, well, Let me check. I can. Oh, you bait. But anyway, I won't go into it. I just joke about it. I won't go into it. The person don't mind if I call her name, but I'm not. But now I call the people, and they didn't deduct anything. Yeah, $100,000. I thought you, Brother Weatherby. I said, "Wow, goodness." No, I'm just joking. I'm getting in trouble. Okay, let's move on. But it was solved and everything is fine. Okay. So verse 6, so Joshua blessed them and sent them away, and they went to their tents. Now to the half tribe of Manasseh, Moses said had given a portion of Bashan, that their brothers westward beyond the Jordan. So their half tribe, this tribe split up. One went one way and one went the other way. If you notice that the Reubenites and Manasseh and Gad, they all marched close together when they were marching to the promised land. And so apparently the Reubenites and the Gadites want to stay on this side of Jordan, and they convinced half of the tribe of Manasseh. And so Manasseh tribe split up. And so it was sort of, they decided that we want to be here. What God has for us is not good enough. We see some things that we want to have. And sometimes people can get with the wrong company, and then they can split up your family, can't they? Yeah. And so the half tribe was split up, and they went on about their business. But Joshua, so when verse 7, so when Joshua sent them away to their tents, he blessed them. So he, when people make their decisions, you don't want that person to marry that person, but they're going to marry him anyway. You can't stop them. Well, give them your blessings. Well, go ahead. You're going to do it. Or you don't want that person to do something and they're going to do it anyway. Well, say, okay, well, I pray for you. I don't agree with what you're making. I don't agree with what you're saying, but you have my prayers. So sometimes people do things and that you can't stop them from doing it, and you don't believe they should do it. But once they decide, you just go ahead and rather than just say, I'm not going to speak to them anymore, you go ahead and say, well, you have my prayers. I don't agree with you, but you have my prayers. So that's the best thing to do. And so Joshua didn't agree with them, but he said, you got my blessings. I hope it works out. Um, you know, somebody buys a car and they can't afford it, and you say, well, I hope it works out where you can't afford it. So you let them go. The best thing to do. Verse 8, and said to them, return to your tents and great riches. Joshua's telling them to go back home now, and with very much livestock, and with silver and gold and bronze, and with very many clothes. They had gathered a lot of stuff when they conquered the land. And he said this, when you get back, divide the spoils of your enemy with your brother, because some of them didn't go to war. Some of them stayed there and watched their families. He said that you guys are going back with a lot of stuff. Divide it with those who didn't go, because they were working too. It's almost sometimes like a spouse goes out and work, and one spouse stays home and take care of the children or the house. Well, then the spouse who's working should divide the income with the spouse who was at home, because they're both working the same way. And so, it happens all the time. And some people, even in church, some people do this and some people do that, but we all should divide what we have. Well, You didn't help us cook. You didn't help us cook the meal, so you shouldn't get none. But there may be the ones who clean the floor or put up the chairs. You know, so you divide. Unless you're at a family reunion and people just come in, they don't do nothing. Then you tell them to leave. They only thing they bring is plates to take back with them. Empty plates in aluminum foil. Can we have that? No, that's for us. But we should do that. And so look at what he says to them. Divide the spoils of your enemies with your brothers. Share with those. And it happens more with, I hear, because I'm counseling, it happens more with wives and husbands. I hear a husband say something like, well, she don't work. My goodness, what do you mean she doesn't work? I was thinking she just cook the meals at the house. Well, that is work. That's more work than you might think. So we should divide. 1 Samuel chapter 30, verse 34 tells us that. You want to read that. And so that's what they did. So that was Joshua's comment to them. Verse 9. And the sons of Reuben and the sons of Gad and half tribe, they returned home and departed from the sons of Israel at Shiloh. That's the place where they had their first meeting, Brother Stewart. And which is in the land of Canaan, to go to the land of Gilgad, to the land of their possession, which they possess according to the command of Moses. And they were on their way going across Jordan. Now watch what happens when they get to Jordan. When they came to Jordan, came to the region of Jordan, getting ready to cross back into their land, which is in the land of Canaan, the sons of Reuben, the sons of Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh built an altar there by the Jordan, a large altar in the perimeter. So they built some kind of church, if you will. Now they have the altar already in Shiloh, but when they get to Jordan, they build another altar. They build an altar. And look what happens next. Verse 11. And the sons of Israel heard it said. What is heard it said? Hearsay. Hearsay. They didn't have the fact. They said, what? Somebody said something, and they heard it said. They heard. You can't. Hearsay is dangerous. Hearsay. And what did they do? Behold, the sons of Reuben, the sons of Gad, the half tribe of Manasseh have built an altar in the frontier land of Canaan in the region of Jordan on the side belonging to the sons of Israel. When the sons of Israel, verse 2, heard of it, they heard it hearsay, the whole king of the son gathered themselves to Shiloh to go up against them and start a war. How many fights have been started on hearsay? Gossip. I just heard. Hearsay is dangerous. So here we have all the 9.5 tribes on hearsay is going to go attack the 2.5 tribes because they think they built an altar. Now what they think is that they built an altar and and God's going to be displeased, and so God's not only going to judge them, the 2.5 tribes, is going to judge everybody. And what you're doing is affecting us too. But it all built on what? Hearsay. How many marriages have been broke up on hearsay? How many churches have been broke up on hearsay? How many fights have been started on hearsay? How many teenagers get killed on hearsay? And sometimes Eve ate of the tree on hearsay. Satan said, didn't God say Eve? Eve said, I guess he did. Hearsay. Yeah. Satan will whisper in your ear and tell you stuff that's not true. And you begin to and you say, well, if you ever hear me say, well, I thought I thought this in my head. That's hearsay. When you think things in your head, that's hearsay. Yeah. Say, bro, leave me. What you want to say?
No, I'm just going to go.
Okay, you want to get to the point, don't you?
10 and 11.
Yeah.
Are they contradicting each other?
No, 10 and 11. No.
Verse 10 and verse 11.
Mm-mm.
They did not build an altar.
They built the altar. They built the altar. But when the sons of Israel heard of it, what you mean? Contradiction. Now, what you mean?
It'll play itself.
Okay, verse 12. When the sons of Israel heard of it, they decided to go to war. But apparently, better heads prevailed. So look at verse 13. Rather than going to war, the sons of Israel sent 2 men to the sons of Reuben and to the sons of Gad and the half tribe of Manasseh into the land of Gilgad, Phinehas, the son of Eliab, the priest. They sent someone to talk to them. What does the Bible say? Come, let us what? Reason together. Before we jump to conclusion, let's talk about it. Now, who did they send? Phinehas. Now, we know Phinehas was the son of a priest, but you may not remember, but in Numbers, he's the guy that when someone came into the temple with his girlfriend and they were desecrating the temple, he took out his sword and killed both of them. So he was a warrior, but he also was a priest's son. So they sent somebody who they knew would fight, but who would talk also. And so that's how you have to send somebody. You can send somebody who's strong but loving. I text somebody this morning, and they were talking about talking to people and all that. And I texted back and I said, sometimes you have to be mother and father. I hope they got what I meant. Sometimes the mother's more tender, father's more stern. And I said, sometimes you just can't be father. We talk about an adult now. And sometimes in your response, you can't always be father. Sometimes you have to be mother and father. You got to show sternness and love. Yeah. There are some people who can only show sternness, and other people can only show compassion without being stern. You got to do both. As Ronald Reagan said, trust but verify. You got to do both. You got to do both. You got to be stern, but you also got to show compassion at the same time. You just can't be one way. Some people like toughness all the time, but toughness all the time will not win. It will not win. It may win in a short period of time. You may be tough and beat up somebody in a short period of time, but in the long run, it'll get you. You got to have both. You can't have just a Secretary of State. You got to have Secretary of Defense or vice versa. Got to have them both. So, verse 14, and with him 10 chiefs, one chief for each father household from each tribe of Israel, and each one of them was the head of the father. So they sent people with them, a delegation. And verse 15, and they came to the sons of Reuben and to the sons of Gad and the half tribe of Manasseh, and they said, thus the whole congregation of the Lord. What is this unfaithful? It said everybody's talking. Now, probably everybody wasn't talking, because if everybody was talking, then they wouldn't have sent a delegation. But sometimes we do what? We stretch the truth. Everybody's saying. Who's everybody? Pastor, everybody's saying. Well, who's everybody? Well, me and my friends. Not everybody is talking. That's all right. Not everybody's talking. But some people were talking. Verse so it's good when somebody says to you, everybody's saying, don't jump that, don't fall for that, please, because everybody's not talking, everybody's not complaining. Remember what Elijah said? I'm the only one left, and God said, wait a minute, Eli, I got 700 more who have not bowed down. So everybody's not. You know, somebody, we put them, we paint with a big brush sometimes. All teenagers are going to hell. Not all of them are. There's some that are doing real good. All blacks are nothing but crooks. No, they're not. We paint with a big brush. And we ought not to do that. All preachers are sinners. No, not all of us. A hypocrite. You know. You know, all husbands are dogs. No, not all husbands are dogs. We paint with a big brush. I know you feel that way sometimes, not everybody. So don't say it. Somebody say not everybody.
Not everybody.
Thank you. Not everybody. But thus says in verse 16 again, thus says the congregation of the Lord, which is an unfaithful act. What is this unfaithful act which you have committed against the Lord God of Israel, turning away from the following of the Lord this day, and by building yourselves an altar to rebel against the Lord this day? So they're already accusing them. He didn't ask them what they did. They're accusing them. They built an altar to turn away from the Lord. Verse 18, and he reminds them, it is not the inquiry of Peor. That's when Balaam, remember Balaam came with a false prophet, enough for us, from which we have not cleansed ourselves to this day, although the plague had on the congregation of Israel. When we followed Balaam, we messed up, and God, the plague got us. He said, that, don't y'all remember that? Verse 18, that you must turn away this day from following the Lord, and it will come about, if you rebel against the Lord today, he will be angry with the whole congregation of Israel. If you rebel, we'll get punished. And so they really would think about who? Themselves. They weren't going there out of love, out of survival. Verse 19, they do make an offer. They say, if, however, the land on your possession is unclean, if y'all don't want to go across the Jordan where you stop, you don't want to go back, then cross into the land of the possession of the Lord, which the Lord tabernacle stands, and take possession among us. Only do not rebel against the Lord or rebel against us by building an altar for yourselves besides the altar of the Lord. Say, you guys come back and just worship with us. Don't build another church. Don't split the church. Just come back and we'll give you land. And then they give them another example. Did not Achan, the son of Zerah, act unfaithfully? Remember when the guy stole the band, the stuff that was under the band, and wrath fell on the whole congregation? And the man did not perish along in his iniquity, meaning that his whole family was killed except his wife. And they reminded them of that. Now we're going to find out what really was going on. Verse 21. Then the sons of Reuben and the sons of Gad and half the tribe of Manasseh spoke to the heads of the family of Israel. And they said, the mighty one, God the Lord, verse 22, the mighty one, God the Lord, he knows. He knows what we've done. And may Israel itself know. And I want to let y'all know, if it was a rebellion or if it was an unfaithful act against the Lord, do not save us this day. If we were really rebelling, don't save us. We weren't building the altar to break up the church. Verse 23, if we built us an altar to turn away from following the Lord, or if to offer burnt offerings or grain offering it, those people over there. But if they see an altar that we have built, they'll know that we are part of y'all. Well, if you're that concerned, you shouldn't have never left. See how your decisions. And so they were worried. When everybody died, we want our kids to know that they still have a stake in they still that you are our brothers and sisters. So we're building a not an outstation, a small altar, but we're not going to sacrifice nothing. All we're going to do, verse 25, for the Lord has made the border. Verse 25, they lie on the Lord. For the Lord has made the Jordan a border between us. No, you did that. You're the ones that want to stay over there. And you, the sons of Reuben and Gad, have no portion in the Lord. So your sons may make our sons stop fearing the Lord. Therefore, we said, this is why, look at verse 26. Therefore, we said. Who said it? This altar came from who? Them. They didn't consult God. They talked among themselves, and they said, let us build an altar, not for burnt offerings or sacrifice, not like the one in Shiloh, not like the official one, but let us build one. Verse 27, rather it shall be a witness between us and you and between our generation after us, that we are to perform the service of the Lord before him with all our burnt offerings and all our sacrifices and all our peace offerings, that your sons may not say to our sons in time to come, you have no portion in the land. In other words, when everybody dies out, the older folk die out, your sons may not say, when we go up to sacrifice, they may not say, why are you coming up here? You're not part of us. But if they see an altar we built to the Lord back here, they won't question that. Now, what's faulty about that thinking? Now, what's hypocritical about that thinking? If they want to stay with them, what would they have done? They'd have crossed with them. Now they're trying to come up with a way that to what? Correct their mess. Well, justify, but also correct, because they say our sons, not just us, our sons and sons. We want our kids to feel part of Israel.
So originally, the land prior to the Jordan wasn't what God committed to Abraham initially.
That was a wilderness.
Okay, that was what. Okay.
And they wanted to stay there because it was good farmland. Yeah, they want to stay there. Yeah, but the key verse is in verse 20. Not well, many key verse, but one key verse in verse 26. Therefore, we said, we came up with this. If God had come up with this, God would have said what? Because eventually, if someone builds an altar, and the main altar is here, eventually, what's going to happen?
The main altar is going to become immaterial
to them. They're going to start honoring this. Yeah. It's like fail not to fellowship. God wants us to fellowship, and it's good to do that. But and it's nothing wrong with this. But suppose you decide, well, I know if I'm just going to stay home and watch Facebook and YouTube, and at home and watch and eat while I'm at church. I'm going to stay home. Eventually, that's going to become your fellowship, and you're not going to come out and meet the people. You just be at home, and you could come out, but you're going to be at home in your bedroom eating ice cream or wherever, watching Pastor Mac live or something.
Sounds pretty good.
But then you're not fellowship. Now, if there's nothing wrong with that. All I'm saying that becomes the main one. Oh, I'm just going to do it for the night because I feel bad. And then after the night, you say, well, I'll do it next week because I felt good. God wants us to sometime what? Come together. I think that's what churches should do. Nothing wrong with those who can't come out, obviously, but those who can should as much as possible. And so verse 28. Therefore, we said, circle the word we said again. We said, man, when somebody say we came up with this passage, boy, that scares me. Woo! We've been thinking, Pastor, we. When I heard that, Brother God, I just shivered. I said, oh, Lord, we. Who are we? I love when somebody say, God has said something to me, but when they say we said, goodness. Miss Stewart, your group say, Miss Stewart, we think we should. You better run. You better run when they say we. Therefore, verse 28, we said it shall also come about that if they say to this us our generation time to come, then we shall say, see the copy of the altar, the copy, not the real one, the copy of the altar of the Lord, which our fathers made. Not for burnt offering. We're not going to do all this worship stuff. We're just going to remind us. But we're not going to do the worship. We're not taking anything from that. Rather, it is a witness between us and you. It's a witness. That's all. It's just showing that we're on your team. We don't want our kids never to think that they're not part of Israel. Well, if you that's the way you thought, then what should you have done again? Should have gone with them. But this is somebody who makes a mistake and trying to spiritually correct it. We have it all the time. You make a mistake, and without correcting it, you try to spiritually correct it. Like Kanye West. God. Somebody help that brother. You can't correct certain things through tweets, aka Donald Trump. You got to do it the right way. Verse 29. For be it, and then they go on and say what really they have on their minds. They say, far be it from us that we should rebel against the Lord and turn away from following the Lord this day by building an altar for burnt offering, for grain offering, or sacrifice besides the altar of the Lord our God, which is before his time. It's on the other side. We're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. But as I say again, if that's where their true feelings, then they never have separated in the first place. That's like a couple get divorced and she or he wants to divorce, and after the divorce, well, let's be friends. What do you mean let's be friends? You want to be friends, stay married to me. Man, get out of here with let's be friends. Huh? Right. Yeah, they got the blessings too. Yeah. Obligation. But the reason why they were building the altar was for, yeah. They just didn't want, they say they didn't want the other folk to forget their children because they were separated. And so but the other folk had thought that they were building an altar to become separate. That's the hearsay. And they said, no, that's not our reason. But then they go on to say how close we want to be. And so I'm thinking, well, if that's the case, then why did you separate in the first place? So it's a lot of dynamics here. You can learn a lot of stuff. And so, verse 30, so Phinehas, the priests, the leaders of the congregation, even the heads of the families of Israel who were with them, heard the words of the sons of Reuben and sons of Gad and Manasseh, and it pleased him. He said, okay, that's why. You're just doing it for a witness. You're not trying to start your own church. That's fine. I'm okay with that. And verse 31, and Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the priest, said to the sons of Reuben, and to the sons of Gad, and to the sons of Manasseh, today we know that the Lord is in our midst, because you have not committed this unfaithful act against the Lord. Now you have delivered the sons of Israel from the hand of the Lord. So you weren't doing it intentionally. You weren't trying to do something. So the Bible says, let your good not be even spoken of. So you weren't doing it intentionally, but that's what they thought when they heard the hearsay. So a lot of points can be made out of this. Then Phinehas, and we'll close at verse 34. Then Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the priest, and the leaders returned from the sons of Reuben and the sons of Gad, and from the land of Gilead, to the land of Canaan, to the sons of Israel, and brought back the word to them. The word pleased the sons of Israel, and the sons of Israel blessed God, and they did not speak of going up against them in war to destroy the land in which the sons of Reuben and the sons of Gad were living. The sons of Reuben and the sons of Gad and the half tribe of Manasseh called the altar witness, or Ed. I think somebody may say Ed. Witness. For they said, it is a witness between us that the Lord is God. And so they're saying, really, it's showing that we are connected. And so that's a good thing. So they try to take a bad situation, make it good. And they did make it good, didn't they, so to speak? But they didn't have to come to this if they all had done what God had said in the time of Abraham, is that your land is over there. But when they got to a certain part, that's when people settled for less. They didn't want to go to the promised land because what they saw, they thought was better than what God had promised. And so they settled for less. And we'll know, and that's another whole story by itself. They settled for less. Because we'll stop here. Let's do our questions. Chapter 21 questions. I thought we were going to get to chapter 23, but we didn't get a chance to get to chapter 23. Questions. How many did I pass? Did I get them to you? Nobody got chapter 21 question. I'm gonna look them up on for those watching my face by YouTube. Go to our website, New Life Bible Church. Not our website, our app, New Life Bible Church INC, and you can pick up the questions. Let me see. Let me see that my producer put my questions in. I got chapter 20. Where's chapter 21 questions? Oh, okay. Okay, I got
Question number 14.
I see question number 22, chapter 22. Okay, what chapter did we just finish? We just finished 22. Okay, what my producer did, they straightened them out for me. They made them separate. Anyway, great producer. Okay. All right. Why did Joshua summon the tribes of Reuben and Gad and one half tribe of Manasseh? Why did he summon them? Oh, that's 21. What? Okay. No. Okay. All right. Okay, I'm looking at the wrong one then. Yes. Go ahead.
Christ forms establishment of the church. Now, how does that differ from an altar?
Say what now?
How does the church differ from an altar?
Well, I use them interchangeably because they're both places of worship. That people go to worship. In the Old Testament, the altar where you made sacrifice. In the New Testament, the church is where God gave his sacrifice. Old Testament altar was where they killed the lamb. New Testament, the church where the lamb has been killed. But I just use them interchangeably for our conversation. They're totally different in the sense that he never said I would build my altar, he said I would build my church. But it's the same concept. They all gathered there for the relief of their sins. We all gather here for the release of our sin. So in a sense, it's the same thing. If someone tries to make a doctrinal difference of it, that's when it's not a church and altar. I would get in a discussion with them. We know the difference. And altar, we talk the altar in the church. We say come to the altar. Altar is where you supposedly ask God to forgive you of your sin. Well, your altar can be anywhere. It doesn't have to be in church. It can be in your car. Jesus said, where two or three are gathered in my name, it could be your altar or your church in that sense. So we don't want to get locked up into, and some people do get legalistic, get locked up into a church name and stuff like that. They get caught up in all that and they miss the point. You know, well, I don't go to church because the church is not a building. Well, I know that. You know, but don't get caught up in that. That's just, if they do that, you know, you miss the point, you know, of what God is trying to say. So the altar in the church, in our terminology, is the same, but in reality, it's not the same. But you know, we're not. But altars where you come and ask God to forgiveness of your sins. Actually, the altar is really the altar of your heart. To be honest, it's the altar of your heart. So that's the only place you can ask in your heart. So you can't go to a place, physical place. If your heart, if you don't ask God in your heart, whether you came to the altar of the church or not, it wouldn't make any difference if you haven't asked God in your heart. That's the key. Yeah. Yeah. But some people need, like babies, some people need a crutch so they can walk on their own. So if I would say come to the altar and for forgiveness of your sins, if they're a baby Christian, they may need that. But as they grow, I would say you don't need to come to the altar. But some people are not at that point yet. And so you just sort of be patient with them till they get to that point. But you don't make that altar a holy place, because then it becomes the only place where you can get your sins forgiven. You don't want to do that either, because then you sort of make that altar an idol, you know, and then you make the church an idol. And then the church be the place where you can feel God. You can't feel God at the airport. You better feel God at the airport, airplane, boat, cruises, anywhere you are. But, you know, that's the maturity versus, you know, stuff. Right. But they saying it wasn't a place to take away from. Well, no, it really wasn't a place of worship. They said witness. They said we're going to still worship up there, but we just want to build this so that the people know we're part of you. So they sort of build altar one, altar, and they build altar two. Now, altar two doesn't have all the stained glass windows, but it just has that. It just says we're part of yours. But the Bible says they build a big altar. You know, it may have turned into something else. You know, yeah. Right. Well, that's what Satan would eventually going to do. Is say, well, why are you going across the river? You got one right here. After the sons, you know, like that, you know. So it's go ahead.
The tabernacle was.
It was in Shiloh, but the tabernacle had not been built. The tabernacle was there. The temple had not been built.
The temple, but the tabernacle was there, and God basically, up until this point, Moses and Joshua still speaking to them at the tabernacle.
Right. Yeah, that was the main place. That was the main place. But since they were on the other side, they were trying to. Their reason was we don't want our kids to be mistreated, so we want them to know and want your kids to know that we are part of the group. So they say it's not a worship center where we're going to offer burnt offerings and sacrifice. It's just a witness center where it's going to be there that when your kids see our altar, they'll know that we are brothers. Yeah. And that's a good thing too. The only thing I said that if they were that concerned, they should have never left. That's all I was saying. Yeah. But that's a good thing. Sometimes when you make a mess, you do your best. You ever seen anybody make a mess and they try to clean it up? Sometimes the best thing to do is just break it up, but then we try to patch it up. And you know, things that are patch up are what sometimes They're fragile. It don't take much to break them apart. So it's good to just go back and say, let's do it right way. Go back to the beginning. You know. But you can find a lot of stuff in there. Uh, uh, what did the Levites request in chapter 21, verse 1? What did they request? Right, they wanted their cities. How many did the Levites obtain rights to the cities? How did the Levites obtain rights to the city? The people gave it to them, didn't they? Right. The people were to give, they retained it through what? The offering of their brothers. How many cities did the priest receive? Verse 19. 20. The priest now, just the priest. Not the Levites, but the priest. 13. 13 is not a bad number. The Levites were dispersed in how many cities? Verse 41. 48 cities, weren't they? And Genesis says that they were dispersed, by the way. You don't have to turn there. All right. I said they were dispersed in 48 cities. And the cities of refuge were 10 cities, and they were spread out evenly in Israel, whereas somebody could go to one of those cities and find comfort. They weren't too far away. And so what does that tell you? If God met the cities where they were all close, when you have a problem, how close are you to God? 6 cities of refuge. 6 cities of refuge and 42 cities of other cities would make a total of 48. But the cities of refuge where you could go when you incidentally sin. And they were so close that within 10 miles in a direction in Israel. And so that's the implication of what? That when you sin, you are how close to God? Just a what? Just a prayer away. You don't have to run. You just a prayer away. So God met the city such that the Israelite could, and back in those days, 10 miles was close. I mean, 10 miles was close. When you had to walk 500 miles, 10 miles was like next door. So that was close. And so when you're having a problem, you don't have to run nowhere. God is so close. He's just a what? A prayer away. That was the idea. But when the devil gets on your back, how close is God for you to give you some help? Just a prayer away. Just a prayer away. Just, Lord, get this devil off my back. You don't have to run somewhere. You just a prayer away. Number 18, victory finally came. How was it accomplished? Verse 44. How was it accomplished? God gave rest. God gave it to him, didn't he? You can read Deuteronomy chapter 7. Verse 19. If we fail, whose fault is it? Verse 45. Number 19, rather. I'm sorry. Number 19. If we fail, whose fault is it? Yep. Because what did verse 45 say about God? None of his promises never fail. So if we fail, it's not God's fault. You can't blame God. Okay. Chapter 22 question. Why did Joshua summon the tribes of Reuben and Gad and Manasseh? Verse 1 to 4. Why did he summon them? Just overall. Why did he call those 2.5 tribes? Right, and tell them they can go back home now. Look at verse 5 of chapter 22. Name 4 things that Joshua told them in verse 5. Observe the commandments. Love the Lord. Walk in his ways. Hold fast to him and serve him. And there's some others, but those are 4 things that he tells us, isn't it? After blessing them as they return home, what charitable thing did Joshua tell them to do verse 7 and 8. What charitable thing did he tell them to do? Share with their brothers. Now that you're going back, share with your brothers. Can you imagine several thousand people, maybe 60,000 going back? He said, now share with your brother. You guys got a lot of stuff here, and you left some home with the other people who didn't come with you. Share with your brothers. Right? Question number 4. Does everyone have a copy of the questions? Who doesn't have a copy of the question? Mr. You have an extra? Anybody have an extra? I didn't bring any. Vaughn, you got the question? Oh, okay. Question number 4. What did the 2.5 tribes do when they crossed the Jordan towards going home? What did they do? Verse 10. The Bible says, my Bible says in verse 10, that they built an altar there by Jordan, a large altar in appearance. In other words, it seems like a rivalry to me, at least it did. I don't know. Well, somebody told them. Somebody said something. Question number 5. How did the other tribes learn about the altar?
Was it really hearsay though?
That's what it said in the Bible. Okay. I'm just reading what it says. And the sons of Israel heard it, or heard it said. Heard it said. What is heard it said? I heard somebody say something. That's hearsay. Yeah, okay. And hearsay, well, I won't go. Y'all can deal with hearsay. Almost led to war, didn't it? Didn't World War II, World War I was based on hearsay, if you remember the history. Something they didn't have the communications, and the Civil War didn't have the and they just heard something and they continued fighting or something like that. Yeah. That's the reason why, in a sense, they back in the 60s they got the hotline to Moscow, so there would be hearsay. It did. Say what? Oh yeah. He doesn't represent all Israel. Question number 6. Who was sent to lead the negotiation with the 2.5 tribes on the east? Was it a good choice? Because he was a killer, wasn't he? And he was a negotiator. I like you guys like the way when those people were acting out in the temple, he got up and just killed them both. He hit the man so hard that the blade went through the man and killed the woman standing behind him. He said, I dare you come into the house of the Lord with this mess. So they sent the right guy. But he was a priest too, Brother Stewart. He was loving. Question number 7. What did the rest of Israel think had been done, and what did they fear? 16 and 19. What did they fear? What did they think had been done? And what did they fear, though? Yeah, the anger of the Lord. They fear that if y'all do this, the anger of the Lord. Like if we don't do this, God's gonna punish us all. In a sense, it rains on the just and the unjust. Good things happen when somebody does good in the house to everybody. Bad things happen when somebody does bad in the house and maybe to everybody, and the good people may get. So it can happen. It can happen, can't it? Yeah. One bad person could do something and it affects the whole family. One good person can do something. So it can happen, but not for God. God knows the distinction, but I'm talking about in life. You remember in 1963 when President Kennedy was shot? What was before they caught Oswald, what was most black folks saying? Please don't let him be black. Don't y'all remember that? Because they knew if he had been black. They figured if he had been black. Y'all didn't say that in 63? Y'all don't remember that. Y'all. Yes. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because they're painted with the big brush. Yeah. Yeah. Because we know anyway. Question number 8. What generous offer did they make? Verse 19. What generous offer did they make in verse 19? They said what now? Yeah, come back with it, and we'll give you some of the land that we've already possessed. So that was a generous offer, wasn't it? Question number 9. What modern day PG phrase could you assign to the response after the 2.5 tribes heard the accusation against them? Are you crazy? Or something like that. Anyway, I'll keep on going. When they heard it, what? No, we didn't do that. Be quiet, Elaine. Question number 10. What reason was given for building the altar? I could build an altar light. Yeah, it could be a witness. We weren't trying to build a worship center. We were trying to build a witness center so that people would know that we're still part of the group. We weren't trying to break away from the church and build another new line. We just Brother God and Sister Stewart. No, we're not trying to start another choir. We just want to sing. You have it all the way. Yeah, yeah. No, Pastor, we don't want another pastor. Let somebody else preach. Yeah, okay, Brother Dorsey. Okay, this is a question number 11. What is ironic about their reason concerning the building of the altar? What's ironic? Right, yeah. If you felt that way, you shouldn't have left. Now, if you want to be friends, well, don't leave. My goodness. There's a TV show that came on. First Lady and I was watching. We were just sitting watching TV. I was doing something with the baby, and the TV was on, and some show came on, and it was a show that neither one of us was something about stay together, live apart, or something like that, a comedy or something like that. And she was, and afterwards, I said, "Well, you like that?" She said, "I thought you had a remote." I know. We just suffered through it because we thought the other one liked it. A waste of time, wasted my time. I went to do something else anyway. But yeah, if you want to, well, anyway, question number 12. Whom did they say put a divide between them? Who? The Lord. They said the Lord divided us by the Jordan River. Right. The Lord didn't divide them. They made their own choice. Yeah. He said the Lord built a border. God told all of them to go across. Sarcastically speaking, their altar was a forerunner. It was a forerunner of. It shouldn't be if, but of. Anybody figure off what? Their altar, not their altar was a forerunner of what? Denominations and church splitting. Sarcastically speaking, of course. Yeah. All right. Okay. Now we didn't get. Okay. Now 20 years later, we won't get to that till next week. Brother Leak, anything? Thank you for tuning us in. Stay live. Stay safe. Brother Leak.